And then it turned out I didn't get to work with her. Yeah, there was 0 scenes with Raphael and Britney Spears, probably at her request, because I had
Hollywood never anticipated what was coming. A confidential Sony recording, a judge ordering sealed files to be released, and a 5-hour penthouse confrontation involving Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, Ryan Reynolds, and even Taylor Swift and Hugh Jackman has now erupted into full public view. None of this, the metadata, the deleted messages, the timeline Justin's own publicist quietly handed to one of Hollywood's most influential crisis strategists, was ever meant to surface. And yet here we are, watching a private feud transform into something far larger than an on-set dispute, larger than a PR battle, and far beyond what any of them believed they could control. For the first time, the evidence itself is speaking louder than the people involved. The silence Justin Baldoni maintained from the very beginning has now become the most powerful element of the entire situation. Everything shifted with the judge's ruling. It didn't arrive with camera flashes or dramatic courtroom scenes, but legally, it was the blow Blake Lively never anticipated, a decision that didn't just tilt the momentum, but rewrote the entire conflict. Until that moment, Blake believed she held the upper hand, a carefully shaped narrative, a sympathetic tone, and swirling behind-the-scenes tension she thought would guide the case in her favor. But the judge's order dismantled all of it. He didn't simply ask for documents, he demanded everything: emails, texts, voicemails, internal recordings, and full metadata revealing exactly what was deleted and when. Overnight, the situation shifted from emotional to forensic, and in that shift, Blake's strategy and Justin Baldoni's quiet restraint diverged into 2 completely different directions. If it seemed like this saga began with a lawsuit, the truth is the real beginning started much earlier: a sealed recording, a volatile penthouse confrontation, a judicial order unlocking new evidence, and a reality Blake Lively never imagined she would have to confront, with Justin Baldoni standing at the center of it all. The moment everything truly detonated was the judge's explosive order. This wasn't a procedural update, it was a legal earthquake. He didn't just deny motions or adjust timelines, he unsealed evidence. Not just emails and texts, but voicemails, internal recordings, metadata, and indicators of deleted messages. Evidence both Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni believed would support their accounts, but which now threatens to damage one of them significantly more than the other. And what pushed the judge to take such an extreme step? The now infamous Sony phone call, the call Justin Baldoni hoped would never leak, and the call Blake Lively believed would vindicate her, yet instead ignited a full-scale Hollywood firestorm. But before that call, something even more revealing happened. According to newly leaked testimony, before filming even began, Justin Baldoni attended a private penthouse meeting with Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and 2 unexpected witnesses, Taylor Swift and Hugh Jackman. Yes, they were in the room. This wasn't a casual gathering, nor was it a friendly check-in. It was a 5 to 6 hour confrontation, an intense marathon of shouting, tension, accusations, and clashing egos. And according to multiple sources, the person who unleashed the most anger that night was Ryan Reynolds. Witnesses say he was uncharacteristically explosive, directing hours of frustration toward Justin Baldoni over creative control, image concerns, and the direction of it ends with us. Justin reportedly tried to remain composed, but the emotional weight in the room was impossible to disguise. Taylor Swift is said to have stepped in at moments to calm things down, while Hugh Jackman attempted to mediate, but the atmosphere was unstable from the start. That confrontation, long before any cameras rolled, set the tone for everything that came afterward. In the aftermath of the blow-up, Blake Lively allegedly began inserting herself into nearly every aspect of the production wardrobe: casting, crew changes, on-set HR disputes, even requesting that every crew member wear name badges with photos so she could commit their names to memory. Some viewed this as admirable preparation, others saw it as excessive control. Either way, tensions were already tightening. Then came the book bonanza incident, where Blake reportedly took select cast members to the event without studio approval. Insiders described it as a power and loyalty moment, one that suggested Blake was shaping the public identity of the film without Justin or Wayfarer included. Justin's team was blindsided. Wayfarer was frustrated. PR teams on both sides sensed the storm forming, and they were right. Everything changed with the Sony phone call. Sony executives stepped in to help stabilize the escalating situation. They read a statement to the Wayfarer team one Blake had allegedly drafted with Ryan that Sony wanted Wayfarer to sign as if it came from them. Justin Baldoni was on the call, as was Jaime Heath from Wayfarer, and something about the tone felt off. Quietly, Jaime pressed record. That recording captured something Blake never anticipated: not proof of a conspiracy against her, but potential evidence that she and Ryan were attempting to push their narrative through. Sony Blake believed the call would expose misconduct from Justin and Wayfarer, but those who've actually heard it say the opposite is true. Justin sounds calm, Blake sounds frustrated, Sony sounds uneasy, Wayfarer sounds cornered, and that single recording has become the defining anchor of the entire conflict. So when the judge ordered new evidence to be unsealed, emails, texts, voicemails, internal recordings, metadata, everyone understood it was tied to that call. But the situation grew even more volatile when the new transcript revealed something Blake's legal team desperately hoped would never surface. Metadata suggesting messages may have been deleted, by whom remains unknown, but the suspicion alone threatens to destabilize Blake's entire case. And there's more. Justin Baldoni's publicist, Jennifer Ayo, compiled a precise timeline detailing every major event surrounding the film's premiere and the behind-the-scenes issues, and she sent it directly to Melissa Nathan, the powerhouse PR strategist involved in Stephanie Jones's lawsuit. This wasn't a casual handoff. It was deliberate preparation and documentation. That timeline, now in legal hands, supports Justin's version of events far more than Blake's. When Blake entered the courtroom expecting the judge to view her as the wronged party, she instead found herself facing a legal landscape where her own choices, her own messages, and her own digital trail may now become the greatest threat to her narrative. And this was only the beginning. The moment the newly unsealed evidence hit the light, the PR war Blake Lively believed she had under control began slipping away from her and into the hands of Justin Baldoni, Melissa Nathan, and a narrative far bigger and far messier than anything she ever planned for. Once the judge demanded metadata recordings and deleted message trails, this was no longer just a court battle. It became a full-scale public relations fight, and Blake didn't simply enter that fight, she walked straight into the wrong side of it. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni quietly aligned himself with one of the most strategic crisis teams in Hollywood. That single decision may be the reason the entire narrative has begun shifting out of Blake's grasp. As soon as the court required deeper digital evidence, every PR agency in Hollywood snapped into defensive mode. At the center of the hurricane were two rival factions, TAG, led by Melissa Nathan, and Jones Works, Stephanie Jones's agency. These two groups have been enemies for years, their conflict tracing back to Scooter Braun, the Taylor Swift Masters fallout, interns targeting Taylor online, and a PR split that evolved into a long-running Cold War. Blake had no idea she was walking into a battlefield with years of unresolved hostility beneath it. Justin, however, knew exactly where the fault lines were, and he positioned himself with TAG, the faction known for playing the long game, not publicly, not officially, but the evidence makes the connection clear. He didn't relay his timeline to Sony or to Wayfair's lawyers. He sent it to Melissa Nathan, a woman accused of manipulation in two separate scandals, yet also known as one of Hollywood's most strategic survivors. And Melissa now had Baldoni's detailed timeline. Blake's early behavior before filming, the penthouse blow-up with Ryan Reynolds while Taylor Swift and Hugh Jackman witnessed the chaos, the book Bonanza incident, Blake's growing list of demands, Justin's concerns, the Sony phone call every tense moment from pre-production through the film's premiere. That timeline became ammunition, not necessarily to attack Blake directly, but to fortify Justin's defense with a consistent, documented pattern of events. By contrast, Blake's side was spiraling. Jones Works was already entangled in Stephanie Jones's lawsuit, a case involving a smear website, two women contradicting each other under oath, deleted messages, suspicious PR tactics, accusations of retaliation, and a general fog of confusion about who was telling the truth. Blake attempted to quietly align with Stephanie, hoping Stephanie's contradictions with Melissa might help her prove a pattern of behavior and bolster her own claims. But when the judge denied Stephanie's request for more time, Blake lost the opportunity to use Stephanie's case to support her narrative against Justin. And then came the real blow. New revelations undermined Stephanie's position entirely, which in turn damaged Blake's PR argument because Blake had tied parts of her case to Stephanie's credibility. While Blake's side fractured, TAG and Melissa Nathan used Baldoni's timeline to present a calm, consistent, professional story, one that painted Justin as measured and transparent. And the situation grew more volatile when fresh evidence surfaced, metadata suggesting deleted messages from someone on Blake's side. No one knows who, when, or why, but it matters. Blake's accusations hinge heavily on what was said, implied, or miscommunicated during production. And if her own team deleted messages, even unintentionally, it casts doubt over her entire narrative. Justin's team immediately ensured Melissa Nathan was informed, and this is where TAG's influence became undeniable. Melissa Nathan is now linked to Stephanie Jones's drama, Rebel Wilson's scandal, the fallout from the Sony recording, and Justin Baldoni's defense. And because Melissa is connected to Justin's side of the PR battle, the public narrative keeps shifting in his favor steadily, strategically, and with a momentum Blake never expected to lose. But while all of this was unfolding, what was Blake's PR team doing? They were working overtime to soften her image: cozy sweaters, Trader Joe's candid snapshots, warm autumn lighting, the familiar relatable mom aesthetic. Ryan Reynolds appeared in emotional interviews, carefully timed public outings were staged, and every photograph looked designed to whisper, "See, she's just like you." But while Blake's team focused on mood and warmth, TAG was building something else entirely: a strategic, legally fortified narrative, Social media loves a wholesome aesthetic, but courts and crisis strategists interpret things differently. In a PR war, perception reigns, and the perception forming now is stark. JustinBaldoni.com. Measured, documented. Blake Lively. Emotional, inconsistent, reactive. Is that fair? Maybe not. Accurate? Possibly. Possibly not. But PR wars rarely reward accuracy. They reward whichever version feels the most stable. And the next twist only makes Blake's position harder, because the PR fingerprints connecting Stephanie Jones, Melissa Nathan, Tag and Justin Baldoni spill into yet another scandal one Blake unknowingly stepped into. This third scandal belongs to Rebel Wilson, and it contains something Blake desperately wishes her own situation had. Screenshots, text exchanges, PR discussions, contradictory statements, messy digital evidence. And once again, Melissa Nathan's name appears at the center. When those patterns are lined up against the newly unsealed evidence in Blake's case, they don't undermine Justin, they weaken Blake's narrative, because the Rebel Wilson situation exposes a pattern Blake thought would help her prove manipulation. Instead, it highlights the contradiction her team wanted buried. Rebel had evidence, Blake does not. Here's the Rebel story in simple terms. Without the dramatic spin others add, Rebel directed her first film, a huge moment with enormous pressure. She later said her lead actress confided in her about an uncomfortable encounter with a producer. Rebel claimed she acted out of responsibility, believing she needed to protect her cast. But when she reported it, the situation flipped. The actress denied Rebel's account, saying Rebel misunderstood, exaggerated, or escalated the issue unnecessarily. Suddenly, Rebel wasn't the protector, she was the one being questioned. Accusations of retaliation surfaced. And then came the part that directly intersects with Blake's narrative. An online campaign allegedly crafted to portray the producer as unstable and dangerous. This is the very pattern Blake believed she could use: PR fingerprints, crisis managers, and behind-the-scenes strategy. But in trying to pull Rebel's situation into her own, Blake walked into the biggest trap of all. Rebel's case contains documentation, Blake's does not. And in a PR war, especially one unfolding under legal scrutiny, the absence of evidence becomes its own kind of evidence. If you want, I can continue rewriting and who was alleged to have helped shape that online narrative. In the story, it was Melissa Nathan, the same PR figure fictionalized in multiple scandals, the same strategist Stephanie once blamed, the same person another publicist contradicted, the same contact Justin's team quietly reached out to, the same individual Blake's fictional PR team hoped to use as proof of a pattern. And now, in this unfolding drama, the judge has ordered that messages involving her be unsealed. Then came the most explosive part of all. The PR text messages, real messages, actual screenshots, strategy discussions, exchanges that lined with Rebel's fictional timeline and directly contradicted Melissa's attempted defense. These screenshots existed whether anyone liked it or not. And in this story, they showed a pattern Blake desperately hoped she could use to claim. Justin's side had orchestrated a smear campaign, but the logic collapsed immediately because the situation in this narrative was completely different from Rebel's and not in Blake's favor. Rebel had contradictory statements. Rebel had an alleged website. Rebel had screenshots and PR texts. Rebel had messy receipts, but receipts nonetheless. Blake had none of those things. No website, no screenshots, no leaked messages, no burner accounts, no contradictory employee testimony, no metadata tying deletions to Justin, no digital trail of sabotage at all. The only thing Blake had was tension, and tension is not evidence, and the real trap ran deeper. By tying herself to Rebel's storyline, Blake unintentionally highlighted something else. Rebel's situation was a contradiction of believed women. One woman accused another, the other denied it. A PR rep contradicted both. Another PR rep contradicted that one. Screenshots contradicted the denial. A website contradicted the screenshots. Everyone contradicted everyone. No one could tell who was telling the truth. That was the last thing Blake should have attached herself to, because her entire public identity within this fictional world was built on championing the idea of believing women. She had posted it, supported it, aligned her public image with it. But now, to use Rebel's situation as ammunition, she had to choose which woman to believe. Rebel, Charlotte, Amanda, Melissa, Katie. The moment she sided with one, she dismissed another and her entire message unraveled. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni benefited from this chaos without saying a word. In the fictional storyline, both Rebel's and Stephanie's situations involved messy PR teams, conflicting testimony, inconsistent timelines, accusations of manipulation and retaliation, but none of those patterns connected to Justin. So instead of proving that Justin had orchestrated a smear campaign, Blake's attempt to use Rebel's case ironically highlighted the opposite. Justin didn't smear her, didn't run a website, didn't rally online attacks, didn't leak stories, didn't retaliate, didn't deploy PR warfare. In fact, his silence made Blake's narrative shakier with every passing day. And now, with the judge ordering metadata to be unsealed, a new possibility emerged, one far more frightening for Blake's team. What if the pattern Blake had hoped to pin on Justin appeared on her own side instead? The court had already secured metadata showing that someone had deleted messages. Blake's team is now deeply worried that the newly surfaced information could be traced back to her own phone. And if that turns out to be true, her credibility collapses instantly. Her accusations weaken. Her carefully crafted narrative fractures, and the entire case shifts. This is why the new evidence matters so much. For the first time since this conflict began, Justin Baldoni isn't just the calm one. He may be the only one whose story has remained consistent from the start. And that alone dismantles Blake's strategy. The Rebel Wilson situation doesn't strengthen Blake's argument. It actually highlights why her case is falling apart. And this unraveling brings everything to the final chapter 1. Her team desperately hoped would never be tied to the lawsuit because the most damaging contradiction of all isn't hidden in PR, messages or deleted threads, but in Blake's own past. Justin Baldoni's silence only makes that contradiction harder to bury. When Blake launched her legal attack, she believed she had every advantage: public sympathy, the influence of a powerful husband, a righteous narrative, and what she thought was a clear PR pattern she could expose. But what she didn't expect was that the loudest part of her strategy would become her weakest, while the quietest part of Justin's approach, complete restraint, would become his greatest strength. Her legal team committed completely to one idea: that if they could show the same PR fingerprints that appeared in the Rebel Wilson and Stephanie Jones cases were also present in her situation, then the court would recognize a pattern of women being undermined. But as the judge continued to unseal evidence, that pattern began to fall apart. The metadata didn't reveal Justin or Wayfar deleting messages. Instead, it pointed to the possibility that someone on Blake's own side did. That single detail, the suggestion of deleted communications, destroyed the narrative she needed the court to believe. Not because it proved wrongdoing on her part, but because it introduced something she could not afford: doubt. Her case depends on tone, intent, interpretation, emotions, and subjective impact, not solid, indisputable evidence. To win, she needed flawless credibility, a perfect timeline, and an untouchable digital trail. Now one question hangs over everything: why were messages deleted? That question overshadows every statement she made, every accusation, every emotional moment her team tried to amplify. And while Blake scrambled to contain the damage, Justin did the one thing PR strategists call the most lethal move in a crisis. He said nothing. No interviews, no emotional appearances, no subtle paparazzi moments, no late-night statements, no anonymous insiders speaking for him, not even soft-focused PR. Silence. And that silence became a weapon. It made Blake's side look frantic while Justin appeared steady and unaffected. But this downward spiral isn't just about inconsistent evidence. It's about how the entire narrative cracked under the weight of its own contradictions. This case has always been about image, and as metadata and timelines began to surface, old stories Blake hoped would stay buried resurfaced as well. The one that hit hardest was her plantation wedding years ago. Blake Lively married Ryan Reynolds at a former slave camp plantation, with slave cabins still visible on the property. Ryan issued a public apology. Blake addressed it publicly, but the stain never fully disappeared. This matters because Blake's lawsuit claims her reputation was unfairly destroyed. Yet public memory doesn't fade. People didn't forget the plantation wedding, nor did they forget how polished and controlled her PR machine once was. Now, the contradictions in her own narrative feel eerily similar to those she's accused others of. Blake once championed believe women, yet now she selectively decides whom to believe. She once projected warmth and stability, but now she appears tied to deleted messages, secret interventions, and confrontations. Where she once avoided PR chaos, she is now at the center of a Hollywood storm she doesn't seem to understand. All the while, JustinBaldonis.com, almost meditative silence makes her look increasingly volatile. Then came the revelations about production behavior in the newly surfaced transcripted behavior Blake believed would never be publicly disclosed. Requests for photo ID badges for the entire crew, micromanaging wardrobe and casting, intervening in HR disputes, firing personnel, reshaping the set dynamic, and allegedly recruiting actors to book Bonanza behind the studio's back. Some interpreted this as a sign of a dedicated professional taking the lead. Others saw someone trying to control the film before Justin could. Whether Blake meant well or not, the optics were unflattering. The more she asserted herself behind the scenes, the more whispers circulated. Is this why the Sony call felt tense? Why Ryan confronted Justin for hours? Why Justin's team meticulously documented every timeline? And now, with the judge unsealing new evidence including the Sony recording Blake had hoped would protect her, the question becomes unavoidable. What if the recording doesn't show Justin as the manipulator, but Blake as the storm? Throughout this entire saga, Justin Baldoni didn't smear Blake, launch a website, brigade social media, plant stories, react publicly, or counterattack. He did nothing. And yet, in doing nothing, he became the most credible figure in the room. When one side fights loudly and the other stands silently, the public naturally